Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. I bet you didn't know that inventing activity by Black inventors peaked in 1899, and it has never recovered. Black and Hispanic college graduates patented half the rate of white college graduates. That's just one of the reasons why you need to know about Invent Together. When our patent system gets more diverse, our nation will get stronger and more successful. Find out how you can help diverse inventors and unleash economic opportunity at inventtogether.org.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys are so excited. I hope you guys are so ready for the most impactful hour you have ever received in your entire life, filled with hope, positivity, encouragement, inspiration, motivation, and elevation, baby. So pull up a chair, pour up a couple of shots, let your hair down, and kick your shoes off because you are about to receive the most impactful hour in your entire lives. I know you guys are ready because I know I am, and I can't wait, baby. Let's go! Woo!
Hey, listen up, y'all. I'm going to shout out this young gun right here because he's trying to do his thing. Joseph Jaffe, not famous. Probably rightfully so, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm famous because, you know, he not famous, and he like, yo, let me call my famous friends and see if they'll shout me out and make me more famous, sir, right? But so, you know, Joseph Jaffe, man, it's cool. You got your late night talk show popping off. That's what's dope. Streaming, been doing your thing, man. Started this in March of the 2020, which is, tough throughout the years, but booking great guests, man. Jamal Mashboard, James Rollins, steady building it, man. Keep it popping off, man. Keep building your brand, man. Believe in yourself. Keep going hard, all right? That's what it's all about. One of these days, this little acronym of yours, not famous, is not going to be true. People going to see you in the mall and be like, I know who you is. Them going to be your cousins saying it all incorrect like that. But you know what I'm saying? You know what you going to do. What you going to do? They family. All right, bro. I'll holler.
A spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye.
I can throw a rhyme down for you real quick. Yes, they call me Thrill. They say that I'm the man. You disagree, how could you? Let me make you understand.
Should we bring her on the show? Can anybody find me? And there she is.
Fresh as some bread. Pour right from the oven. When you feel rejected, you get some of my loving.
Take on me.
She looks wonderful. Mom looks amazing.
Somebody too. Okay, Mom, bugger off now. I've got to show it to you.
No. Like that?
Joseph Jaffe, ladies and gentlemen.
You just made the new intro of the show. Well, welcome everybody. Happy Thursday. It is a great day to be alive because it is a day for hope, positivity, and optimism in that order. You know what? In any order, as long as you bring it, as long as you bring the hope, the positivity, the optimism, and we're going to be talking about all three of those tonight. I am Joseph Jaffe, and I am decidedly not famous, but you want to know who is famous? Donald Duck is famous. It is actually not National Donald Duck Day. That was yesterday. And today is actually National Iced Tea Day, which I celebrated yesterday. So I got a little bit muddled up, but I suppose Donald Duck gets muddled up too. So how do you say Happy Iced Tea Day in Donald Duck language? It would be something like, oh God, please tell me I'm not about to do it. I'm about to do it, which is, well, you know what, whatever. You know what, I'm punch drunk. We're moving on, Mr. David Libby is watching, and I'm glad you are here as well. The first and the last talk show host ever to do a Donald Duck impersonation. So I apologize to Walt Disney right now, who is turning in his grave. Thank you, David Libby. You are too kind, my friend. You are way too kind. Little sneak preview of next week's very famous guests. I mean, not as famous as tonight's guest. More on her in a moment. But it is Del Leonard Jones, the very famous Roger Firestein, Bill Jensen, and making her return, the one, the only Tamsin Webster. And this is my last show until August. More on that soon enough, because tonight we celebrate the famous Margot Bloomstein. She's a brand and content strategy consultant, a speaker, and author of an amazing book called Trustworthy: How the Smartest Brands Beat Cynicism and Bridge the Trust Gap. And then after Margot and after our correspondent Tom Morris, the philosopher, we have Prince Ayinde. He is a creator, he is a poet, and we are excited to listen to him, to watch him, and to observe talent in action. Well, it is 12 days to heart surgery, 12 days to go. And, I am going in for a procedure tomorrow morning. I'm having a TEE, which is not pleasant, and a catheter in my wrist, a couple of pre-surgery to-dos. A little nervous, not going to lie, but I am emboldened. I am heartened, pun intended and not intended, to all the people that have shown their support, that have stepped up. Jackie Goddard and Martin Obada just donated today. I want to thank you to everyone that has been a part of this. And of course, David Berkowitz, who donated the granddaddy of them all. I just appreciate everything that you've done and the support that you've shown to me. And if you do want to support, quite frankly, 267 shows, 267 guests, you can do that at rally.io/creator/Jaffe, which is my creator coin. And as always, 10% of the proceeds go to the Mitral Foundation. Everybody wins at the end of the day. Well, let's do birthdays. Brett Kaplan, happy birthday to you. Gina Mencias, I hope I got that right. And Musharraf Bapari, hope you guys are having an amazing day. But now it's time to get a little bit serious and talk about cynics, talk about cynicism. There are going to be a lot of sounds, no doubt. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get tongue-tied at least once in this particular soliloquy. We're going to touch on cynicism tonight with my guest, Margot Bloomstein. And as I was looking for quotes to share, I found this one. Cynic, one who not only reads bitter lessons from the past, but who is prematurely disappointed with the future. So two things jumped out at me. Number one, cynicism is a choice. And number two, cynicism should be discussed in the same conversation and context as optimism and pessimism. In a show about hope, positivity, and optimism, surely cynicism is the sworn enemy that the very essence of Joseph Jaffe is not famous pushes off against. And I wondered, is pessimism and cynicism the same thing? My conclusion is no. Cynicism is far worse. It is snarky pessimism at best, and the very epitome of toxicity at worst. The most deadly kind of poison because it pollutes, invades, and destroys the one thing that keeps us going, hope. Whereas a pessimist may have formed a worldview based on their own past experiences and adversity, and because of this are struggling to stay positive, or have not as of yet developed the kind of tenacity and fighting spirit to stay upbeat and keep going. The cynic is immovable and has their mind made up. Whereas the pessimist is weak, the cynic is strong. Whereas the pessimist is self-defeating, the cynic is intent and hell-bent on ruining it for everyone else. The cynic is the ultimate narcissist. I remember reading Richie Rich comics when I was a kid, and Richie had a cousin named Reggie, who I guess was a cynic. I remember the word sneer used to describe his attitude, his approach to others and his actions. Well, I saw another quote that said, "The cynics are right 9 times out of 10. That may be so. However, it does not mean we can't figure out how to make the best of a bad situation." Just this week, I was with Ivan Pollard, Global Chief Marketing Officer at General Mills, and I surprised him, I don't think pleasantly, because he is a humble man, with a video highlight from his interview on this show. Quote, "As I said to my father-in-law at the beginning of this, Jim, we're all going to die one day. We may as well enjoy the days we don't. We have a choice. So let's turn those sneers into cheers. Choose positivity. Choose hope. Choose optimism. Choose light." And now we get to choose light in the form of Margot Bloomstein. A little bit about her for you and for your pleasure. Margot Bloomstein is one of the most prominent voices in the content strategy industry. For more than a decade, she's taught message architecture workshops and keynoted events in the content and design industries. A working content strategist for more than 20 years, she's helped brand cultural tourism in Sin City. Got to ask her about that. Content for Europe's largest sex toy retailer. I guess I got to ask her about that too. And technology publishing industry. She's the author of the industry mainstay Content Strategy at Work and the newly critically acclaimed Trustworthy, How the Smartest Brands Beat Cynicism and Bridge the Trust Gap. Please join me in welcoming her to the show. I got a little bit tongue-tied right at the end, but happy to welcome her. Hello, Margot. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. How are you?
I mean, I thought for sure cynicism, pessimism, optimism, criticism, all of that was going to come back to ism me. And then it turned out I got a little tongue-tied in your intro. But it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I always feel like alliteration can only lead to good places there. But yeah, you were kind of caught in the world of isms there a little bit. It was a dangerous place, but you made it through.
I made it through as well. Margot, you are guest number 267 in this little adventure of mine. And before we even begin, I think we have to address the Stein in the room. I've decided to have a Stein versus Steen count. I asked you, is it Bloomstein or Bloomstein? And
Right.
indeed, it is a Stein, as in a beer, as in Skål,
Yeah.
or Prost, or cheers.
Yeah. Picture like a flower in a beer mug. Bloomstein.
I guess that was the point. Yeah, I guess that was the point. But also, cheers, as in not jeers or sneers, but cheers. Just as a little funny aside, I, throughout the crazy events of 2020, when Rod Rosenstein was on television, and of course, sometimes in the same interview, the pundit would call him Rosenstein or Rosenstein. And immediately it made me think of Frankenstein and Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein and Gene Wilder. And so every time they would call him Rod Rosenstein, I would go, it's Stein. And every time they'd say Rod Rosenstein, I go, it's Steen. So I'm basically just going to completely get this botched up. And we've got the Stein versus Steen count. So that's how we're going to, keep score.
That's cool. That's fair. And Leonard, Byrne, Stein, Steen, rolling over in his grave at all of this. We're just steining it up here.
Now that is a burn if I've ever heard one. Now, Margot, before we get into the before, you've got sex toys and Sin City on your resume. And maybe both projects were running concurrently. You never know.
No. Totally separate projects, both completely. I'm choosing my words carefully, but both completely on the up and up. yeah, working with the state of Nevada, Reno, and Las Vegas, and cities in between. I was part of a project to look at how they could improve cultural tourism to the state. So how to get people out of the casinos and looking at the history of the state and whatnot. And yeah, they're one of those places where I think, like with most, I guess with most clients over the past 20 years, what I have found is no matter what I think going in, no matter if I think that it's going to be boring or arcane, or how much can we really tell as far as the story of their industry, the moment you start digging deeper, you're like, there are gems here that we need to surface. And this is fascinating. And that goes for Las Vegas. That goes for the sex toy industry as well. A lot of fascinating content strategy issues there.
Well, I'll tell you, there is a lot of culture in Las Vegas, but generally it's growing on parts of the furniture. And I'm just kidding, just kidding. But I know if anyone would have cracked the code, it would have been you. We have so much to cover, but we have to go into some fun facts about you. Everybody wants to know who is the real Margot Bloomstein. And it turns out that, you know what, I looked at this as well, and I was trying to read it carefully. I used to work next to an enormous, unfortunately placed Tyrannosaurus Rex skull, and the unfortunately placed part threw me.
Yeah, so that's an amazing picture. I'm trying to recognize the columns there to see if that is the one of the museums that I know or not. But yeah, about nearly 25 years ago, I worked in the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh, and my office was down in the basement. And right outside my office was this enormous Tyrannosaurus Rex skull. And it was down in the basement. The rest of the Tyrannosaurus Rex was upstairs in the Hall of Dinosaurs, because that is one of those. It was one of those fabulously old, dusty museums that had funded some of the first paleontological. Get some other ologicals in there, I think.
I like it. It's a new word and it makes sense to me.
Yeah, we got the paleo part in there. But they funded some of those really early dinosaur digs. And as a result, most of the dinosaurs on display in that museum in Pittsburgh are the actual skeletons, not plaster casts of the bones. And that was true for most of the dinosaurs on display. The one issue was that to put the Tyrannosaurus Rex skull all the way up on top of its body, it's too heavy. So that was the one kind of body part that was actually just a plaster cast. Up until about 15 years ago, when scientists realized that the way Tyrannosaurus Rexes had always been displayed, sort of like, look at my small arms here up in front of me, head up high, was wrong. Our model for dinosaurs was wrong. That type of dinosaur, he wasn't trying to like reach tree branches and whatnot. He was actually lower down. So his head would have been in front of him, not way up high. And once they realized that, then they could put the original head on display with the body. So that head is no longer outside of my old office, but it used to be my neighbor down the hall for a while.
Now we learned about dinosaurs. As I said, you can trust Margot. She will tell you things that you might not have known. And you can even trust her to take you in a helicopter, because can you believe that we found this photo of you? Your wonderful husband chartered an open door helicopter so you could spend time doing one of your hobbies and passions, which is photography. So, you know, we actually got a photo of it, and there you are from this experience. Can you believe it?
The bad Photoshop I really love that jacket, but
you know, I take umbrage with you know, I would have preferred very bad Photoshop, but
it's fabulous and complimentary Photoshop, so there is nothing bad about it at all. I take it back. Several years ago for my birthday, it was spectacular present. We flew out on an open door helicopter, which is the kind used for like aerial photography and all. And it was exhilarating and breathtaking. And to be strapped in like that 10,000 feet over the ground to shoot out was incredible, because like I love shooting out of planes and whatnot, but usually there's like the glass separating you there. And I'd been in helicopters once or twice before, and this was just incredible. And combined getting to fly like that with getting to shoot so much out kind of at the world around us, and it was incredible. And
I think I would have just majorly freaked out. I mean, I would have just sat glued to my chair. I wouldn't have leaned over at all.
It was great. It was so great. It was so great.
You'll have to send a photo in, and I will show that on a future episode of the show. Would love to see some of the work.
I am happy to. Yeah. I mean, I've never been skydiving. I don't see the point of jumping out of a perfectly good plane, but the opportunity to lean out of any sort of aircraft that doesn't have the doors on, I am there.
Well, you and I have actually something very, very powerful in common, which is we both have copies of Trustworthy in our backgrounds. So if you look over my shoulder, you will notice there is your book, which arrived safely with a beautiful personal message, inscription, and autograph from you. Thank you very much. So you. Now I will one up you, and the backgrounds now of the show are all little motifs and wallpaper of the new branding. But when I get an author in, I give them the full treatment. They get the full treatment. We just go all trustworthy all over them all the time. This is your new book. Congratulations on its release. And I'm excited because we're going to talk about trust. We're going to talk about cynicism. We're going to talk about brands. We're going to talk about even authenticity. We may even hint at something called empathy, which I know you have some thoughts on. But I would love for you to set this up, how the smartest brands beat cynicism and bridge the trust gap. And I will ask you this question off the bat, which is, when you've done 267 different interviews, things that are different, stand out a mile. And first of all, cynicism is not a word or a term or a phrase that has come up even at all. But now the connection between cynicism and trust, well, that intrigues me. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about why cynicism in context of talking about trust.
I guess I put the two together. I started putting the two together a few years ago, probably like 5-6 years ago, when I was seeing how in my industry, so many marketing messages were falling flat. Outside of my industry, like in the political sphere, we were seeing more and more people that were kind of walling themselves off from new information. I think we saw in the 2016 election cycle how it didn't matter who you supported when you maybe learned new information about them that was maybe a little destabilizing. It didn't necessarily change your support for that candidate. And I think we saw that sort of writ large across certainly across the American presidential election, that as people were taking in new information, it didn't necessarily change their support of whoever they were supporting to be president on both sides of the aisle. And that bothered me because it represented a real change in how politics has previously worked, how we've sort of known and thought we knew politics worked in this country, where it used to be that when maybe new information came to light about a candidate, whether it was Gary Hart or somebody on like a smaller stage, when we would learn new information about them, it might scuttle their campaign. And the media was good at kind of calling politicians to task on some of that new information. But this time around, that wasn't happening. And we saw how politicians were kind of riding these waves of support, sometimes enabled by media. And I wondered if that relationship between information and audiences had changed. Were people just not listening to new information? Were they kind of trying to kind of shy away from it, or what was really going on? And what I came to understand is that as people were learning new information, it didn't really kind of cut into their understanding of the world, their worldview that they had cultivated, which in many cases was cynical, where they had said, all politicians lie. You can't tell me anything new. I believe what I believe, and that's the end of the story. And that bothered me because my clients and the types of companies that I work with are largely not within the political sphere. But I wondered, this issue where people were saying, like, you can't tell me anything new, it's not going to change what I believe, would it affect them as well? Because if that kind of thinking, if that sort of insidious thinking creeps out of the political realm, I mean, it's dangerous enough there, but if it creeps out to other ways in which we engage the world as consumers, as readers, as thinkers, as shoppers, if it affects our kind of standpoint in the world like that scuttles all the efforts of marketing. It scuttles all the efforts of someone that might be trying to roll out new features in a product, or to help people better help themselves, or help them engage government services. If people are saying, I'm set, I don't need anything new, I don't need any new information, I know what I know and that's enough, that's a really, really dangerous place.
I can see now the link forming between trust and cynicism. And, I was thinking, as you were talking, all these thoughts popping into my head. One is, it's almost like this belief, which is, you would have thought, right? Which is, what would it take? What would have to be true in order for you to be able to say, I'm done with this person, I'm done with this candidate, I'm done with this party, or whatever the case may be. And we just saw, truth be told, actions that were so non-believable, unbelievable, and I'm talking about January 6th, and still, you had, the illegitimate, bastard stepchild of marketing, PR, or maybe marketing and advertising is the bastard stepchild of PR, the other way around. But you had spin. You had the ability to justify. For example, somebody does something wrong, and it's like, well, we all make mistakes. We're flawed. We're human beings. I mean, it's positively biblical to make mistakes. This country is all about second chances and redemption. And suddenly everything, is turned on its head. And I just want to ask you something, something just struck me. And I'll try and make this point as succinctly as I can, which is, maybe we've been going about it all wrong, which is trying to think about how big a lie or how big a travesty would have to be true in order for us to abandon ship. And maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe it's the small things. Maybe it's the crack. Maybe it's the seed of doubt. And what I mean by that, I could never understand when I came to this country how with President Clinton, that it wasn't so much what he did, it was that he lied about it. And I thought to myself, but surely the lie is insignificant relative to the transgression. But what happens is, people would say, but if he lied about that, what else would he lie about? And maybe that's the flip.
I would posit we're in a different political cycle now than we were then, because I think what you're talking about in the Clinton era, I don't think that is the beginning of the cycle that we're in now. I think that is the ending of the cycle that started maybe with Nixon, where just like then, it wasn't the crime, it was the cover-up. But I think what we see now around lies and do they matter, and those small inconsistencies that you were describing, do they matter? I think that's asking the wrong question, because when we say, like, well, how big a deal does a crime need to be, or how much does a politician need to mess up before we withdraw our support? I don't think we should be asking, like, what does a politician need to do to lose our support? Because I think that puts it all on that politician. The same way so much of our trust sometimes is on a brand, and like, well, how much does a brand need to screw up before you stop buying that product or you stop supporting them? I don't think it's about the brand. I don't think it's about the politician. I think it's become more about us. We've become an increasingly narcissistic society, as you were saying, kind of equating cynicism and narcissism. I think that is spot on, because as we've endured more and more gaslighting over the past several years from politicians, from the media and all, as people have kind of then pulled back from those traditional sources of expertise, we've turned instead to our filter bubbles and then become increasingly aware of those filter bubbles and how they can be gamed. So then we withdraw even further to say, well, if you can't trust anybody, I'm just going to go with my gut. I'm just going to trust myself. If it feels right, maybe it is right. And that can be incredibly dangerous, because most of us are not scientists. Most of us are not economists to be able to make good decisions about the economy or about public health.
So interesting. So it actually, like, it's a bit of a, like, almost like a rally of a game of ping pong, because the reality is we do need to, if I'm hearing you correctly, we do need to place our trust in others, in authority, or in institutions. We have to, because you're saying is we may feel the safety and security of trusting ourselves, but we are kind of not exactly the best authorities.
Right. We are notoriously bad arbiters of fact.
Love that.
And I think to come back from that means we need to start figuring out, well, how can we be better at evaluating those sources of expertise, to not just kind of blindly trust everyone, but also not wall ourselves off from new information with cynicism, because that can feel awfully safe, but it is not a long-term solution for surviving in our society either. I mean, we are a society and depend on other people. We outsource our knowledge to other people and websites and sources of expertise. I mean, we turn to Wikipedia because we don't know everything. We turn to IMDb because we can't always remember that actress's name or what else she's been in. So I think knowing that, we need to get better at how we evaluate sources of information, how we evaluate sources of authority. And that's where I think brands and companies and government institutions can still play a big role by looking at how they build and share authority, how they gain confidence by rebuilding the confidence of their audiences. And I think, to go to your original question between cynicism and trust, that's how we regain trust, by helping people rebuild trust in their own ability to evaluate information and their own ability to know if they're getting information from high quality sources.
Well, and we can also do that through the good old Minocqua Brewing Company. I love how you've basically, you're telling some great stories and giving advice for brands, because right now brands are lost and marketing is not the best Sherpa, and marketers even are not the best Sherpa to lead brands through these trying times. Tell us why you love the Minocqua Brewing Company.
Yeah, so they're a story that actually didn't make it into Trustworthy, but so I've been talking with their CEO, Kurt Bangstad, and he's built a tremendous, can't even call it a company anymore, maybe a movement. It's a super PAC with a brewery attached to it. So Minocqua's, I guess, platform has grown out of the fact that when they were just another brew pub up in Minocqua, Wisconsin, they were hit hard during the pandemic, and they applied for and didn't get the second wave of funding, the second round of loans in the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Program loans.
Right.
They didn't get the loans. And as a result, he had to start laying off the people that worked at the restaurant. Now, it was a business that had been hit pretty hard. They're in a tourist area. And and they were in a really bad way. And after realizing how Mitch McConnell was playing politics with his whole industry in not doling out those payments fairly in the restaurant and brew pub industry, he, as a business owner, said, "You know what? I've been told long enough to keep my politics private, that they have no place in business. However, now is not the time to be quiet about my politics." So he made up this really big pro-Biden banner and hung it outside the brew pub. And he got some stares for that. He got some applause for that. And then he started getting pushback from the county board saying, like, the banner can't have that up. It's too big. We need you to take that down. Otherwise, we're going to start fining you for it. And he knew that that wasn't true, that it was within all kinds of legal standards and whatnot, and they actually couldn't fine him for it because of previous cases around free speech and whatnot that have gone up before SCOTUS. And so he started running a campaign to help him pay the fines that they were going to be allegedly levying. And suddenly this effort to collect funding in support of his personal politics, it got bigger and bigger. He raised over $100,000 and decided, well, if there's that much visibility around this and that much support for fairly liberal politics here in a pretty conservative area, well, let's go bigger with this. And he started selling off the remains of the beer that they still had there. And you showed the cans for it, how he packaged it up and renamed it. I think there's the Kamala Stout, Fair Maps IPA. If you're an IPA person, I am not. Apparently it's still good. And people started coming from all over, all across the state, I think from Minnesota as well, to buy this product. Not because they felt it was the best beer in the world, although it turns out it is pretty good beer, but because they were drawn by his politics. And they said, we want to support that too. And this idea that business can make their values visible and maybe alienate some people, but then reach a far broader audience, I think that's something that we're seeing play out now more and more. And what Minocqua is doing, so yeah, the brew pub, they were in a bad way, but they were able to shift their operations after getting so much more support and a much broader customer base to now becoming a brewery, and they're distributing all across the state. They're getting more and more distributors every day, more and more places selling their beer every day. And many of those places have waiting lists, pages long, of people that are saying, hey, when are you getting in this beer? Because yeah, I can order another IPA, but those politics are my politics. I want to support that company. And people are drawn by that. I think we are always drawn by people that share our values. And for businesses to do that, to make their values visible, it's a way to establish rapport with your audience. It's a way to build trust with your audience. And it takes vulnerability.
So it's something that came up with Jeffrey Hazlett when he was on the show. He said, pick a side, pick a lane.
Yes.
To use the line from Hamilton, if you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for, right?
Right.
People that don't stand for anything will fall for everything. And so it's a really interesting example. And, another one that I feel is kind of, in that same vein is, what happens when good brands go bad, or maybe not bad, but go through tough times? So this is an example that I think piqued your interest with respect to Zoom. And again, it comes down to, what do you do as a brand when you've made an error, as whether they call it a rookie error or not, a misstep, or gone through challenges. How do you emerge? Why do you like this example?
So the story of Zoom over the past year and a half, I think, is a wonderful example of corporate vulnerability emerging as a strength. Because, if we think back to December 2019, sort of before the pandemic reached pandemic proportions, Zoom had something like 10 million daily business users a day. And they were trucking along. Most of those business users were supported by IT departments who were coaching them on things like set a meeting password, maybe have a waiting room so not just everybody can join your meeting. And within just a few months, so by March of last year, they had ballooned to having 200 million daily meeting participants. And they were preschool teachers meeting with their classes online, still those business users, people meeting for birthday parties and cocktail parties. And they weren't supported by IT departments. They weren't always setting up meetings with passwords. So then you got all the Zoom bombers. And those 200 daily meeting participants from like 90,000 schools across 20 countries, they were wrangling with issues from a platform that was performing in ways and for people for whom it had never been designed. And Zoom could have responded by saying, "You're using it wrong. Come on, set up the security appropriately." But they didn't. In April of last year, Eric Yuan wrote this open blog post that is a model in vulnerability. He spoke in the first person, singular, to say, "I am sorry. Here is what we are going to do about it." And he spoke to his audience in a way that they could understand the problems that the brand was facing, how they felt that, yeah, journalists are uncovering issues and we are hearing about issues that we should have fixed proactively. So we're going to enact a feature freeze. We're going to shift all of our engineering resources to focus on security. You can expect, I think it was weekly updates from me. We're going to submit to an independent transparency report and independent auditing. Here's what you can expect and at what frequency. And that blog post was detailed. He didn't just kind of dip into a lot of jargon or hide behind jargon, but he showed a tremendous amount of respect for his audience. So he wasn't trying to dumb down things that were going on either. And he spoke in a voice that was consistent and contrite. He accepted personal responsibility. He took personal responsibility, offered the right volume of detail, and he was vulnerable enough to demonstrate accountability. So it was a model apology as well. And following that approach of consistent voice, the right volume of information, and a vulnerable tone, he really helped to cement trust in the organization and in the platform. People continued to use Zoom because they realized how it was continuing to improve.
So I see, let's summarize. Voice, right? And your 3 Vs. Educate with humility and transparency. Volume, say what you have to say, then stop. These were 3 points that I picked up from your book. And vulnerability, convene community for collaborative creation. Nice alliteration there, by the way. But these were the 3 Vs that I picked up, maybe slightly different to the ones that Zoom used. And I couldn't help but think about what's happening with Clubhouse at the moment with respect to whether it's bullying, with respect to a lot of hate speech and even, anti-Semitism, that if they, maybe we need to send a copy of the book to the founders of Clubhouse and A16Z and Andreessen Horowitz, because what you really are saying is don't pay lip service to it. Go all in, be able to pull the hard stop and say, this thing, we won't stop until we put a stop to it. Maybe not say what you have to say, then stop. Do what you have to do, then stop. Maybe do what you have to do, then start. But that's what I see coming out of this fantastic example, which is don't just the rote apology. If you want to build trust, and if you want to, battle that enemy that is cynicism, then you've got to basically go all in.
Yeah, wade into it, embrace the problem, acknowledge the problem, and say, yes, we screwed up. I screwed up. If I'm the CEO and the buck stops here, I screwed up. Here's how we need to improve things. And I think when companies do that, when they acknowledge a problem and then bring the audience in, kind of convene the community to say, okay, we need to think differently about how we're approaching this so that we achieve a new and better solution. Tell us what you think. Give us feedback. Let's talk through possible approaches to this. Let's prototype in public. I think all of those efforts are incredibly risky. They make the company vulnerable to criticism and greater scrutiny, but that's exactly how you bring your audience closer. And I think for Clubhouse, to acknowledge the problems in the platform, to say these problems are happening, even if they're not yet ready to say, and we are at fault for allowing them to continue. Let's figure out how we make this better for everyone. That would be a tremendous investment in building trust.
And I will add one more point there, which is I love that phrase, prototype in public. Again, another beautiful alliteration. But prototype in public is not to hide behind, the mask of beta, right? Just because you're in beta does not give you license to be able to say, well, you know what I mean? We're just figuring it out. But you can be in beta, but still, when it comes to doing the right thing, be an alpha, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think also there is always that problem that sometimes when we have things existing in FPO or in lorem ipsum, we run the risk of then going live with that stuff, with that garbage, that stuff that is just in beta, still live on the site. So there's a lot of merit, I think, in practicing how you want to perform, in testing how it should actually be, not just perpetuating problems because you're in beta, but looking at it as an opportunity to continuously improve.
Well, I have to acknowledge also perpetuating the problem. This was very, very alliterative. One more thing before we wrap up for now, and I just feel like we've just begun. I cannot believe how the time is flying, but we always have a quote, and I found this quote on cynicism and connected to the soliloquy, but interesting nonetheless. Cynicism is an unpleasant way of saying the truth. It's amazing how many of these definitions actually say that, cynics are really just speaking the truth, but just doing it in a mean-spirited sort of way. I struggled with trying to understand it, but I figured you might be able to shed a little bit more insight on how to interpret this.
It's hard for me not to kind of like scrunch up my face when I see that, because to say it is simply an unpleasant way of saying the truth, I think does a disservice to the truth. I think when people are cynical, they look at the world as it is and say, it's worse. And maybe there is a shred of fact in there, but I think that they are limiting their exposure, their understanding of the world. Then they're only taking in a small part of the world. I think that people that want things to be better, whether they are writers or designers or marketers or public health officials or voters, they look at the world as it is and say, it can be better. And I think whether you're saying it's worse or saying it can be better, they are both two sides of the truth, but only one is productive.
And I will add one more thing, which is there are three sides to every story, right? Your side, my side, and the truth.
Right.
But Margot Bloomstein, you bring the truth to us. I will just tell people one thing, which is if ever you are in a Zoom and this individual comes a knocking, good old bend over, do not let him in, because this actually did happen to me. And it turns out he wasn't real. But enough about Sin City and sex toys. Let's talk about ways that you can connect with Margot Bloomstein. Please follow her on Twitter, on Instagram. Join her in the club. Connect with her on LinkedIn. Buy Trustworthy: How the Smartest Brands Beat Cynicism and Bridge the Trust Gap. And I want you to think about this book. I want you to buy this book. I want you to bring this book into your company, because we need to get this thinking in the hands of every marketer, designer, writer, CMO, CCO, CFO, CXO who can run with it. Margot, I hope you'll pull up a chair and relax a little bit as we go into our correspondent. And then after Prince performs, I hope you'll come back and hang out for a few more moments with us.
Wonderful.
Well, that was Margot. That still is Margot. This is Joseph Jaffe. And that was Margot Bloomstein. Still figuring out the full screen thing. But now we get into our correspondent. It is Thursdays. So it is Thoughtful Thursdays with Mr. Tom Morris delivering a little bit of philosophy for us.
Hi, I'm Tom Morris. There are two words I'm hearing a lot recently. Maybe you are too. No, not the words crypto and currency, but the words empathy and authenticity. I mean, I didn't hear these words very often just 2 or 3 years ago when there were a lot of people in the news who didn't seem to embody either quality. Maybe by a sort of moral backlash, we've come to appreciate the importance of each. Authenticity is just about being genuinely who you are. No games, no bluffs, no pretense. Empathy is about having a deep emotional understanding of who other people are and what they're going through. These two qualities could seem really different, but they're actually both about the same thing. They're both about transparency. Authenticity is about being truly and transparently you. Empathy is about allowing the feelings and needs of others to be transparent to you in your own thoughts, feelings, and motivations. To anyone without empathy, other people are closed rooms with locked doors. Empathy is an act of moral imagination that opens those doors and enters those rooms with respect and care. Authenticity is itself moral, an act of moral courage, which is what it takes not to hide behind an image, but to be vulnerable and honest about who you really are. It turns out that both these things are keys to being and doing our best together. Authenticity and empathy are both renewable natural fuels for human flourishing. So it's good for us to ask now and then, am I being fully authentic with others? Am I being fully empathetic with others? Both qualities will help us to our own best results in the world. Remember, you can't fake authenticity. And if you're having any trouble with empathy, I'm empathetic.
And that is Mr. Tom Morris, the author of The Oasis Within. And now speaking about authentic people and authenticity, it's time to bring on Prince Ayinde, who is our creator who will be performing. Prince, I'm going to bring him right on because you didn't send a bio. You didn't send, your own spin. I said, how do you want me to introduce you? And you said, just call me Prince. So Prince, yeah. I'm just calling you Prince. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
I am all the better to see you and to have you on the show. There is your very famous photo as well. You are a creator. You are a poet. And tonight you're going to be performing for us. You're going to be performing Right and Be Wronged. And I would like for you, if you don't mind, set it up and then, take it away and I'll let you do your thing. And then, we'll come back and chat.
No problem. So, Right and Be Wronged is, it's something I'm working on. It's actually a poem that will, Lord willing, be in my next poetry book, which will be entitled Self. Silence eventually lights fires. And so this poem in particular is about, sometimes people will say that we're wrong for the choices that we make in life. Sometimes people will judge us, and this poem is just speaking to that and, saying that maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe I just right. So I don't want to give away the poem, but yeah.
All right, take it away.
Thank you. She said, he right. So how am I wrong? He said, he right. So how am I wrong? They say, He right. So how am I wrong? They wrote against the prince in attempts to dethrone the inevitability of my reign, poured venom into my chalice, thought my expressions a sin, so they sifted through the fine print to find if I had been confined by my sentences, found threads slightly fragmented, broke code of our tribe and left me defenseless. Why is it every time I choose the right path, scribes and priests pass over on the other side, instead look for ways to deter my disciples like slinking serpents, whispering in their ears while they sleep through Eve? I rose from Maghrib prayer, weeping, feeling the time of my untimely demise creeping. So before I left as a sacrifice, I had no choice but to right the wrongs of the village and call it commandments. No choice but to right the wrongs of my lineage and call it scripture. I had no choice but to right the wrongs of those poor sinners in my own blood, and they called it gospel. And that's that piece.
Wow. That was amazing. We're going to bring Margot back as well, and just put you center stage. That was you.
Wow.
You might be a modern day William Shakespeare, my friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What did you think, Margot?
That was terrific. I was in awe because you were pulling out. We haven't spoken before this, but I love that we were all kind of vibing on those same angles of the many sides of truth. I think, Joseph, as you had said, there's your version, my version, the three sides of truth, like your
Right.
truth, my truth, and the truth in the middle. And I love how you were kind of rolling with that.
Yeah. The poetry is something that's very to me, I consider it very sacred. It goes as far back as people do in terms of being able to express oneself, but not just express oneself because I choose to, but to be able to express oneself as a means and as a way to educate those that come after you, as a means and a way to uplift those who might not be, feeling empowered at that point in time. Being able to encourage and breathe life into people, because sometimes you do have a bad day at the office. Sometimes you might feel wrong for being yourself. And so, I strive to write to be like, no, be yourself, accept your own, be yourself, express and be comfortable in that, because if you're not yourself, then who are you? Other than a copied version of something that your soul doesn't even agree with.
Oh my God. I mean, even that response was poetry.
I don't even think about it. It kind of just happens.
My question to you is, do you ever have a bad day? Do you ever have a bad day with words? Because you truly do have a gift.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I do. Personally, I don't believe in writer's block. I feel like you just either want to write or you don't. And if you force yourself to try to write, you will tell yourself whether you want to write or not, because it'll either flow or it won't. So for me, yes, I have a bad day with words because I use them so much. Sometimes I don't want to look at them. It's like siblings. You get so comfortable with them. It's like, sometimes go away, but the beauty of it is, when you know how to use words, you know how to say more with less. And when you know how to use words, sometimes it could take one word and you can start something that becomes a chain reaction, right? Going back to, I believe you all were talking about the voice, the volume, the vulnerability. That's the description of a poet. We all have a voice. We all have to create this content that is us, the voice. We have to choose the volume, the sensitivity to, should I say this and stop? Should I keep going? Should I continue? Should I say it louder? Should I say it softer? And then the vulnerability of, this is my truth. You know what I mean? And more than that, sometimes poets channel, which is, it's an art of being able to tell someone else's story in such a way that you would think it was your own. So I have a bad day, but the good outweighs the bad.
I have a feeling that Margot and Prince are going on the road because, I mean, it's unbelievable how aligned both of you were. And, you know, Margot, I know that, you know, part of your book talks about the power of words and the, you know, being succinct. What you just said, Prince, was amazing. This idea, you know, this idea of saying more with less at the end of the day. Make every word count. I will tell you that when I present, I don't read. It comes from my heart. But when I started writing these monologues, these soliloquies, I started writing and I started looking at every single word, and I read that from a teleprompter, which is not authentically who I've been. And I've learned how to be a better reader. And you know what? If I can read with the same emotion and intonation, and it is music when you deliver your poetry. I need to be a lot more like you, Prince. So thank you for that.
So you want to know what's crazy? I would encourage you to not do that. And the reason why I say that, a very good friend and mentor to me, Prentice Powell. He's well known for spoken word and poetry throughout the country. He told me, don't try to be like anybody else. The beauty of poetry is that whatever you identify with, that's what you stress. It's not a lot of, especially in spoken word, it's not a lot of studying other people. It's more so a deep dive into yourself and who you are and what you identify with. And then you express it. And as you express, you find ways to refine it in, you know, poetic devices and things that are concrete, if you will. And then, but you continue on being yourself. So I would more so encourage you to be the best Joseph that you could be, rather than try to.
I'm gonna completely ignore your advice, and I'm gonna give you the official air horn. If you want to send some love Prince's way, you can send. We are living in the creator economy. You can send tips via Cash App or PayPal, and more importantly, I mean, you have music as well. You can stream Prince's music on all digital platforms by searching Prince Ayinde and purchase music related or inspired merch from his website.
I'm actually wearing some right now. So, yeah.
I love it. And
this stands for,
I know what that word is. That's actually vulnerable.
Yeah, it stands for vulnerable. I took out all the vowels and I made an entire collection called Vulnerable. It's based on a song actually called Pessimistic. All these words that have been said on this platform.
Isn't that crazy?
So yeah, all of it's connected.
You know, I mean, I would do it like you would convene. I won't, but convene community for collaborative creation. Prince, I loved you coming in. Margot, do you have any final thoughts or questions, comments for Prince or for tonight?
I am blown away. I mean, the connections that you were making between authenticity and empowerment, it's wonderful to hear them in such a more powerful voice as your own. Thank you.
And Sierra's been sending you some love throughout as well, Prince. We appreciate it. And by the way, Matthew, this is about as live as the fact that it is 10:04 p.m. Eastern Daily Time. We are live every single night, at least Monday through Thursday. I have the distinct privilege of being so not famous that I can have real famous people like Margot Bloomstein/Stein, just kidding, and Prince Ayinde. If you like the show, please tell a friend, and you can subscribe. I mean, that's all I want from you. All I want from you is your love and for you to subscribe to the show. Give the show a chance. You can do that through bit.ly/subscribe to the show. And I leave you guys tonight. I will be back on Monday, 4 more shows, and then taking a break until August when I go and get my leaky heart repaired. But I can tell you my heart is full tonight, thanks to Prince Ayinde and Margot Bloomstein. We always end with Mr. Chuck Norris, who will tell you, forget about what I thought about Prince and Margot. What did Chuck Norris think about you?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. You're in good company. I will see you guys on Monday. Have an amazing weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.
You too.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.